Hello, this is Dr. S, and I hope you are enjoying Greek as much as I have making these videos. Today we're going to look at the personal pronouns and then some extension of the third declension words. So let's see what we can find. So personal pronouns are used to replace nouns and avoid repetition in English. So for example, if I say I am speaking to John and teaching him, I don't repeat the word John, but I replace it with the personal pronoun him. Otherwise, it would be kind of repetitive and would sound awkward. Another example, I have a sister and I like her. John and sister are here called antecedents. So you can see that John and him correspond in the gender and number, and so does sister and her. So the way that we use the English pronouns is the way that we also use the Greek nouns. So when we talk about personal pronouns, the case and number and person need to be identified. So the case of the personal pronoun obviously is determined by its function in the sentence. When we are looking at the personal pronoun, its number is determined by the antecedent, and the person is also determined by its antecedent. So let's look at the example. I am speaking to John and I teach him. Notice here the personal pronoun him obviously corresponds to the word John. Both in number, both are singular, and by its person. It is obviously referring to John, and him is therefore masculine. Now we have also the personal pronoun him. It is the direct object of the verb and therefore the verb teaching. So therefore it has to be in the objective case, and therefore it is him. And obviously the next example where we have the personal pronoun her, it corresponds to sister, both in its number and person, and because her is direct object, obviously then it is in objective case. And this is the way we also need to look at the Greek personal pronouns and how they correspond to the word's antecedent. Obviously, the English personal pronouns in first and second person are very easy and everybody is able to identify. We have the subjective case in singular, obviously is I. In possessive, it is my, and objective case, it is me. And obviously the second person, singular, follow the same suit. When we're looking at the plural, we have we, our, and us. And also plural, obviously, in English looks exactly like the singular. So first, in this table of Greek pronouns, let me just highlight to you I here. Then we have you, singular. Then we have we, first person plural, and you, first person plural, just to get the bearings on this chart. Then we can also highlight here that we have singular and plural. And as usual in Greek, we have 4 different cases: nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. So each pronoun has its 4 different forms based on its case. And now I is obviously very easy to remember in Greek because we tend to identify ego anyhow with I. So ego is nominative singular. Now, when we say my, we see that the corresponding Greek personal pronoun is mu. Obviously, my could also be of me, or notice also that we do have another form of genitive singular, emu, but the only difference is that it has the epsilon and circumflex accent on top of the epsilon. These forms that are in apprentices are actually very often considered emphatic. You notice they also occur here in the singular you. So then dative singular, which we would translate to me or for me or even in me, would be moi, and then direct object accusative singular would be me. So in Greek, me. And the plural forms correspond as well. So hemes is we, hemon is our, hemin is to us or in us or for us, and hemas is us. So if you pay close attention to the endings of each one of these or most of these, you can see that they have some similarity or correspondence to your case endings if you have memorized the charts properly. Obviously, mu has the omicron epsilon ending, which is the general way that, or the general form that you find in genitive singular. Same thing in dative singular, you have the iota. Now this is a little bit different here, but then when you go to the plural genitive, the omega nun, and dative plural has the iota, and also the accusative plural has the alpha sigma. So the second person singular, su, su, soi, se, again corresponds to what we saw in the first person. So su is your, soi tu, in or with you, se is you. And then in the plural, we have humes, you, plural, humon, your, humin, to you, and humas, you. And notice, obviously, there are lots of correspondences in terms of how we translate them, but certainly that is the reason for that is because English doesn't have a specific form of you when it's in nominative and when it is in accusative. So that's the weakness of English in terms of we have to deduce it from the context, and I suppose it's also a strength. However, because the Greek order is so flexible, you may find the accusative in as the first person of the sentence, and many other ways that the words can be arranged. So it is important that you remember the case endings. So let's take a look at a couple examples. So the first sentence, ho logos mu, or we could have another sentence, ho logos su. So now you can see here, ho logos, we already know that, nominative singular masculine, the word, and then we have the personal pronoun mu in the first sentence, and the personal pronoun su in the second sentence. So if you can guess what is the gender, well, there's really no gender, but the number and the case of this word is, right? So mu means of me. Obviously, because it's genitive, we would translate it as ho logos mu is my word, and ho logos su is your word singular. So obviously the literal translation, ho logos, the word, and genitive of ego, which is mu, the word of me, which obviously makes no sense in English, so we would obviously translate it as my word. Same way, ho logos su, your word, or literally the word of you. Let's look at the second example. Ego baptizo humas hydati. So here we have explicitly I, and this word we haven't had, baptize. Then we have a personal pronoun, and then we have a third declension word in dative singular. So I baptize you in or with water. So notice this one. What is the case of this word? Yes, it's accusative. So it is plural accusative word of you. Sorry, not of you, but you, since it's accusative. And obviously it's accusative because it is the direct object of the verb baptize. I baptize you. And this word is in dative singular, in or with water. So those were the first and second person personal pronouns. And in the next lesson, we're going to look at the third person personal pronouns. But before that, we're going to look at a couple of the additional third declension words and how they conjugate. Now we are familiar with the word sarx, as you can see in the last column, and the way the third declension words conjugate, with sarx becoming sarkos in genitive singular, sarki, dative and accusative sarka, and plural is sarkes, sarkon, sarksi, sarkas. And again, it's good to keep in mind the two slightly different forms when we have the combination of letters that collide, forming kappa sigma forms xi. But now when we're looking at the other form, you can see that we have certain stems such as karit, phos, and elpid. Now each one of them follow a certain pattern, and then there are also other words in third declension that follow the pattern of these words. So in that sense, these are just representatives of subcategories within the third declension. Notice though that the endings for each third declension word is identical, with the exception that we have some consonantal changes. So let's take the first word charis, which means grace or favor. The reason we call it a tau stem is because it actually, the stem ends in tau. However, the word in nominative singular is charis. But notice as we start to add the endings, the stem actually ends in tau. So charis becomes charitos, chariti, so the endings are the same as you find here, right? So charis, charitos, chariti, and charita. Sometimes the nu is added to that, but the basic form is charita. So the tau is found in every one of the forms in singular forms except in the nominative. And notice again, we can already draw a line between nominative singular and dative plural because they have the exception of not having the tau in their stem. or they conjugate with the combination of letters. So now you can see the nominative plural, charites. Again, we have the epsilon sigma as we found here. Chariton, charisi. So this is where we have something different happening. And then finally, caritas. Now, tophos, which means light, follows a very similar pattern. And actually, some would say that also it has the same sort of tau ending stem. I didn't put the stem form here. I put the whole word. But as you can see, the tau actually reappears here. So phos is nominative singular, genitive is photos, photos, right? Sounds similar. Photos, obviously genitive form, photi, and then phos, notice this is a neuter word, so we have the same nominative and accusative forms. And then in plural form, again, phota, photon, and now again we have the similarity between nominative singular and genitive plural, phosi, and then we have phota. Again, similarity because we are talking about neuter words. All right, and then the next form is elpid, so it's the delta ending stem. And again, the same pattern occurs. So elpis means hope, but then we have elpidos, elpidi, elpida. And then in the plural, elpides, elpidon, and notice here again the similarity, nominative singular and dative plural, elpisi, you have the sigma reoccurring, and then elpidas. So this is just an indication of the importance that you have to know the nominative singular word and then be cognizant of the changes that occur within the stem as the various case endings are added to that word. One important aspect is knowing the third declension case ending, the nominative singular form, and then the ability to recognize the various patterns within the stem changes. Then we also have another third declension word, which is called consonantal iota forms, which basically means that the final iota just prior to the case ending is called consonantal iota. And that basically indicates that the consonantal iota drops and is replaced by either another regular iota or epsilon based on what is the following letter. So if the case ending begins with vowel, the following letter is epsilon. If with consonant, it is iota. So let me just look at this word. The theory is not as important as recognizing that there are words of this nature. In particular, this word pistis is probably those kind of words that occur with such frequency that you will learn to recognize it. And there are a couple of other words that follow the same pattern. Obviously, pistis means faith. So as you can see here, pistis in genitive becomes pisteos, right? So this would have your regular Omicron sigma third declension genitive singular ending, but because we have contractions and consonantal iota ending, we have epsilon, and then the Omicron lengthens to omega here. Not important to remember, but just as a way to understand how we get to this form. And then you can see that dative singular becomes pistei and accusative becomes pistin. Looking at the plural becomes pisteis, so faiths if there's such a form, and pisteon, this is an easily recognizable form, and pistesi, this is a little bit awkward, but you should be able to recognize it by isolating the plural dative ending, and then we have pisteis. So this is a recognizable form, and it also helps you to recognize the pattern. But overall, the alternative iota and epsilon prior to the ending is the decisive pattern. And finally, we have two final third declension words. One that ends in ro, patr, and one that ends in tau. So two very common words. One is pater, obviously very easy to recognize, father, and to hydor, which is water. So again, you can see that though the stem ends in ro, so this follows a regular pattern, patros, patri. Then in some cases we have an additional epsilon, patera, pateres, pateron. But here in dative plural, the epsilon is missing, so we have the regular stem with the ending patrasi, even though we have the alpha here, and then we have pateras. So these forms again are more something that you want to just overall become familiar with, and to be cognizant of the fact that the stem of the word can actually include some changes within vowels and pattern. Same applies to the word hydor. So you can see that the hydat is the stem, so hydatos, hydati are very much in conformity to the pattern, and in a way also nominative and accusative, as it is a neuter word, follows the same pattern. Then plural hydata, hydaton, and again hydasi. We have slightly different things happening here, and then hydata. All right, so these are the third declension words. Now you can begin to see that the third declension is actually quite a bit more complicated than the first and second declension nouns. However, the ending of the words do remain the same, in a sense that it is constant within the third declension words. However, there are some changes and some alternatives, alternating vowels, and some slight differences in the consonantal pattern. So you need to do your detective word well, and then you need to look at the ending and be aware what is the actual nominative singular form of the word. So finally, for the practice, in the workbook, page 39, you have the warm-up and parsing. So that's important to practice those, and also the homework on page 41, number the sentences numbers 7 to 9 to translate as homework. And I will also then inform if there's going to be a vocabulary quiz and which ones would be the chapters, but tentatively chapters 10 and 11 for the next week as a vocabulary quiz.